when's the last time that you just sat out on the back porch and just went, look at what I've done. Look at what's happened. Look at my kids. Like, just we're always thinking about the next thing that needs to be done, and we don't stop and just rest. But God, from the very beginning, he says, rest.
Welcome to A Home That Heals. I'm Brie, along with my mom, Dee, and we are so glad you're with us today because we have a very good friend joining us today, Brian Yeager.
Brian is general manager at KTSY, and he's president of Barefoot Media. The big thing, though, for us is he is head of the KTSY family, and we're part of that family. We're so grateful to be part of that family, so it's like, old home week around here.
As you can tell, Brian Yeager wears many hats, boss, father, and husband being the most important. And we wanted to bring him in as we grapple with this idea of rest. So we encourage you to grab a cup of coffee, kick up your feet, and let's chat. Brian, thank you so much for coming in and being with us today as we talk about a really hard topic, frankly.
Yeah, rest is not easy for, I think, most people. Definitely not for me. And I'm knowing you guys, I know it's not easy for you either.
It's a 4-letter word. I mean, it kind of is. Tough for people to grapple with. I think there's like such a swing too sometimes. A lot of people have it like, okay, rest, good idea. And then you just want to go on a vacation for the next 4 months instead of figuring out a way to build it into your lifestyle. Gosh, it's just something we really grapple with.
I love the concept of a God who says to take a day off.
Yeah, me too.
Like, it's set into the very beginning of the word, and I'm a big Bible guy. I've been a pastor and done youth ministry and all this kind of stuff. But in Genesis, in the creation story, God creates for 6 days, and then there's no sin. There's no stress.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we know of that is anything like this, but God just says, and now I'm taking a day off to celebrate what I've done and to enjoy it. Like, when's the last time that you just sat out on the back porch and just went, look at what I've done. Look at what's happened. Look at my kids. Like, just we're always thinking about the next thing that needs to be done, or my kids are about ready to, or if we don't get the new dance shoes, or if we don't do the thing, then there's disaster. And we don't stop and just rest. But God, from the very beginning, pre-sin, he says, rest. And then when you go to the 10 Commandments, he says, remember the Sabbath day. Like, remember to rest. Remember to stop. Like, it's such a beautiful thing. And then you have Jesus in the gospel saying the Sabbath was made for man. I made rest for you. And then in Hebrews, it uses this entire idea of rest as an allegory for salvation. And again, I'm the Jesus guy sometimes, so I kind of get into this, nerd out with this stuff. But the very idea of salvation is you can't do it. Jesus saying, I'm doing it for you so you can rest. It's fabricated into the word, but our culture, our mindset, even our Christian values, Christian as in cultural values, really reinforce like, how many jobs and boards and how many things are you involved in and how busy are your kids? And that we deem as success when Jesus is the one who would go away from the people. You see him running away from people to have rest.
True.
Who does that?
Yeah.
There's thousands of people. The disciples are like, look at all the people. And he's like, yeah, we're going to go. We're going to leave. Yeah. We need to rest. Yeah. It's so upside down to the life that we're given and told is successful.
I feel like on this podcast, our mission, our passion is to remind parents, you were made for this. And yes, they are made for this, but they're not made to carry it all on their own, all in their own strength. They are going to be equipped and they are going to be filled with God's power and his strength. And just like you said, how it is so countercultural of what the world is shouting. The world tells us that we need to be busy with all the things. We need to do it all in our own strength, that success is based on how busy we are, how many things we have on our to-do list. And so we want to spread the message that you were made for this actually means you were made for rest. You were made to lay it down and let God take it.
So I had this conversation with a friend of mine several years ago. And we were talking about the busyness and the expectations of life. And I said, okay, remember now, and you have to understand that when I'm telling these stories to other people and I'm encouraging other people, it's group therapy for myself. It's really the things that I need to hear, okay? So let's not in any way, my family will rat me out. My employees, my team here at Barefoot Media will rat me out in a heartbeat. Like, Nice thought, Brian, but we know you. But I'm talking to her and I said, okay, so remember when you're on the airplane, right? And it says, in the case of loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will fall from the ceiling. If you're with children, put yours on your nose and mouth first and then put it on your kids. And I almost ended up in an argument with her. She's like, no, I'm putting it on my kids first. And I'm like, no, because you're going to faint and fall over the aisle and be absolutely worthless to your kids if you're not breathing that oxygen in first. And it wasn't to blows, but she was vehemently arguing with me that no, this isn't the case. It actually came up last week. She's like, yep, that was me. I remember that conversation. I'm like, oh my word, I do too. But I think that when you're talking about, you were made for this, we build the expectation of what that means. Now, sitting with you guys is intimidating, okay? Because on this side, I've got Dee Sarton, who was one of the best news anchors in the industry for decades. She's an amazing communicator.
Wow,
She's
Brian.
an amazing person. She's just oozes love. It's crazy, right? And then I've got Brie, who's doing this amazing stuff with her children and figuring out ways to make her home a home that heals. And it's awe-inspiring. And then across from us is producer Grady.
The producer
Grady,
Grady.
right? Who's a technical wizard, who is an amazing dog dad, who's one of the most loyal, level-headed guys you're going to meet, right? So we start to fill ourselves with all our lives with all these amazing people, and then we start to say, I have to be as good a communicator as Dee, as loving as Dee. I have to have the steadiness that she has. I need to be as innovative in dealing with my family as Brie is. I need to be able to understand farm stuff because apparently my family would do a lot better if they were on a farm like Brie. Then I need to be like Grady, and I need to understand graphic design, and I need to understand digital production. And suddenly I've created a job description for myself that no one can do.
This is so true. What a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you say you were made for this, you were made to be who you are, not who Dee is or Grady is or Brie is. So quite a few years ago, I planted a church. It was a crazy, awesome experience. And one of the coaches that worked with us said, Brian, when we started a church, we just adopted this as a belief. If God wants us to have a ministry in that church, He will raise someone up for it. And if He doesn't want it, it won't be. And if there hasn't been someone raised up for it, we don't need that ministry. Now transpose that onto your life. If you don't have the bandwidth, if you don't have the people in your circle, because, hey, we all need community and group, and we do much better in tribes and groups. If there's not someone there, maybe your kids don't need it. Because you'll read the books, you'll read the thing, you go, there's so many things with my kids that I'm like, we're not doing this well. My wife has chronic illness. I work a very busy job. There's things in our life I go, even listening to the podcast, like, oh, I wish I did that better. But it's just not the reality for us right now. Yeah. And I have to accept that I was made for this, but that doesn't mean that every expectation out there is what I have to do.
It's kind of a key word, this. What is this? This in what we're talking about, and like with you today, is you're made for the things that God puts right in front of you, And like you're saying, we get so distracted with all these other things when our family is one of the first things that He gave to humanity. I mean, He gave us the idea of marriage and the ability to have children and the responsibility to raise them. And I think that's what we're trying to say too, is first things first. And when you start trying to be all things to all people, is what I hear you saying, that takes away so much from the focus that we want to have on our families and our kids. But it is the pull of culture. It is the pull of this world, and hard to fight against. So I'll ask you said they'll rat you out, so I'll just get you to rat yourself out. How do you deal with all of that? I mean, you've got a very busy job. You've got a lot of people depending on you and a lot going on. You go home. Can you turn it off?
Sometimes yes, sometimes really no. But what I've learned recently is over the last year or so, There's been a lot of things that have come down the line, and some of them very stressful, kind of earth-shattering, reorienting, stressful for me. My personality is I know you will be completely surprised by this, Dee. You have no idea. I'm a very driven personality.
You're right. I'm shocked.
Right up. Yeah. Who saw that coming?
That's why we wanted you to talk about this, because you're kind of the opposite of rest.
So my natural inclination is, when things go south, sideways, weird, is put my head down and get it done. Mm-hmm. I'll just take more on myself. I'm, like I said, very driven. So a couple months ago now, my director team looked at me and said, Brian, when are you going away? Now, I've had a weird career, weird story. So I graduated college a year before I planned to, because my dream job was opening up, which was traveling, doing youth ministry. Loved all of that. And so I spent 4 or 5 years a part of a traveling youth ministry team. Fundraised, built it, went on the road, all of that. As you can imagine, getting something like that on the road is very, very stressful, very busy. There was a friend who, before we started the training with the first team, was like, Brian, why don't you take this weekend, go away, go be with God before you launch into this. Like, you've been so running ragged, you just need to go be with God. So I did. I was in Michigan, went to this weird little spiritual retreat place where there was like a vow of silence when you walked into the place. And it was just me and God, and it was great. I slept, I was with Jesus. It was powerful. So I've kind of made that somewhat of a habit since then, that about every year, sometimes every other year, I go and spend a week by myself. And when I first got married, my wife's like, why can't I go? And I'm like, because I'm a people pleaser, and all I'll be worried about is if you're happy. This is my time to reconnect with me and with God. Now she's like, go, you're a much better husband when you come back. We know when you, and so I hadn't done that since pre-COVID. And then all of this, COVID happened. We got through all of that. And then this other major stuff happened. And so it was like, I'm just drained. But I think I'm getting a good foot forward. My face is good. We're strong. We're getting through it. And my director team loved me enough to look at me and go, Brian, when are you going away? You need to go. And I went and took a week up in the mountains in Idaho, up in McCall, and reset. And one of the things that I learned is we fight the fruit all the time.
What do you mean by that?
We see something in our life. I'm not connecting with my kids. I'm getting poor habits with eating, whatever. That's another issue that I have. And we face the fruit, the issue, rather than the root cause.
Okay.
So when I went and dealt with some stuff with God, had to deal with some bitterness, had to deal with I found out up there bitterness with God. I was angry with God for some things that happened. I didn't even know that. Then as my soul got in the right place and I realized, wait a second, I need to be filling myself in a different way every day. As I'm in that place spiritually, in a good place, then when I leave work, the weight of what is undone, while it's still at home, okay, yeah, I'm going to work later tonight and get some stuff done. That's kind of my work cycle. I can walk in the door and be present with my family. I can walk in the door, and I've got 2 teenagers at home. I've got 5 girls total. 3 of them are on their own, actually living together. 2 of them are still at home. And I can be present in the moment with them when I'm filled up with God.
Boy, that's good. And but you had to take the time.
I had to take the time for that, and I had to continually, it can feel like another to-do list. That's where my personality style, you start, well, now I got to make sure I got to stop and take time. It's my identities in Christ. I've been going into Psalms in the 90s. They're these big worshipful Psalms. And as I focus on the greatness of God, my own issues get smaller. My stress goes down. I walk into the time with God going, I'm anxious, I'm whatever. And it's like, we're going to sing praise to God. He's good. Our God is steadfast. And I just sit there. I won't even read an entire Psalm, and they're not long. But sometimes I'm on one verse and just letting that wash over me, feeling that emotion, saying, okay, God, you're this big, so how does this look to you in my life? And with that, then I'm walking into work in a better place. I'm able to be more connected with my staff. I'm able to smile and laugh and joke and all of that, rather than just like, and now we grind. Everyone grind some more. Grady's laughing because he's like, yeah, I've seen both sides of that grind.
Yeah.
That's the reality. As we are filled, it spills out. But we usually attack going, well, I'm not measuring up in this way, in this way, in this way. So then I'm trying to create my action plan so I can have more moments with my children. It's not the action plan. It's where's the soul? Are you where are you in that place? Because I start to get my identity from work. When I go to my dark side, I start to get my identity from work. So if that, and I start to fear that if it all collapses, it'll all be my fault. And so then I'm working and striving and working and striving. And you can do that with your kids. You can do it with work. You can do it with whatever.
Yeah.
It's always going to be that thing that you take that responsibility instead of, oh God, you are my God.
No, go ahead.
I don't understand mental health from a perspective outside of Jesus.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Isn't that, Brie, that's really why we do this, is we know just in our own lives, we couldn't possibly do it without Jesus, his word, his truth, being able to run to him. But I'm curious how you're processing what Brian is saying here as a young mom with 4 kids at home, young kids.
I am loving this. But it is a lot to grapple with and to process, because I'm having flashbacks to before I really saw, or really just allowed Jesus to completely come in and dig up those roots and help me see that he is enough, that his transforming power is enough for our family. Because we were dealing with all the things, the diagnoses and trying to figure out, like you're talking about the fruit. We had this problem that we wanted to solve and we weren't getting at the root of it. And when we brought him in, and when I realized, you know what, it's not my problem to fix all of these things by finding the right specialist and just figuring out the right formula. No, God's got this. Like, he is big enough. He is good enough. And just like you said, we had some mental health things we needed help with, starting with me. I was the main one, and he's still working on me. And there is no counselor. There is no drug. There is nothing that can compare to when he really just took a hold of my life and started to help me see how I was rooted in the wrong things. I wasn't laying my burdens on him. I love that verse, come to me all who are heavy laden and I will give you rest. We need that, especially as parents. That are playing so many roles in life.
And fighting so many battles. Big battles right now. Don't you think, Brian, we can look on it. You've got teenagers still at home, so this is real for you. My kids are grown now and out of the house, but I have grandkids. And the battles that our mamas and papas are facing now are so much bigger than, I can't even express it really, because I just find that what is being thrown at their children and at them is everybody, like my son wears this t-shirt that says, y'all need Jesus. That's just really where it comes down to. You just do, because it's too big. Mm-hmm.
There's a prayer that a Christian counselor gave me several years ago. And I want to just bless you with this. Mm. And it's so simple. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Mm. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. So let's break that apart for a second. Jesus, we're talking to the guy who literally broke out of a tomb. Hmm. There is, and you may not be a Jesus person listening to this podcast. You may be here for the family stuff. Sorry, I'm the Jesus guy in here. But take an honest look at the historical fact of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Even secular scholars acknowledge that Jesus existed, lived, and died, and something happened. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's a lot of evidence
The
for the
evidence is
resurrection.
so deep.
You've got to look at that.
Will walk into it. So if this guy burst out of the grave, and now he's listening to me, then he's got enough power here. He's got resources. I'm not just talking to a phantom. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm putting my trust in this table.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, sure. No, I'm putting trust in a living being who broke the laws of science, physics, and all of it. So Jesus, I surrender myself to you. It's not a word we use a lot, the word surrender. But you think of medieval knights. They're bested in battle. They're handing their sword over. They're kneeling down. They're in a place of vulnerability. They're saying, I am no longer in charge. I am no longer my boss. I surrender to a king, to a ruler. The default idea of that is that person is ruling. They have complete authority. My identity is under their prerogative. My identity is being part of their kingdom. So Jesus, I surrender myself to you. I am giving up control. And then the last part of that is the best. Take care of everything. Because if Jesus, the guy who came out of the grave, is now in control, you're responsible for the mess around here. These kids, they won't behave, you're responsible for them. Now, instantly I can hear my own voice and yours going, okay, but what about? I got to be responsible. What about these children? I got to do. Here's the thing. Move from that position of high anxiety to that place of, okay, God, show me what to do.
Yeah, and that's where it gets exciting.
If there's something I'm supposed to do, then show me what it is.
Yeah.
You lead me to what it is rather than me trying to drive it and figure it all out. Like you said, running so hard to all the things. Okay, God. Now, he puts us in community. He puts us around people. I'm not disparaging experts by any stretch of the imagination. But the responsibility is moving to Jesus.
That's a big shift.
Now I can sit in freedom. You'll be amazed at how your creativity goes up as your peace goes up, because stress constricts us and we don't think, versus when we're in that freedom space, then the ideas are coming and the Spirit's moving and God's saying, hey, what about this? And you're like, wow, that was good. Where did that come from? It's called Jesus, and you weren't looking to yourself anymore so he could speak.
You know, when we started this podcast, we had one idea of what we thought it would be. And then as the year has progressed and we've, done a year's worth of podcasts, our thinking has changed. And I asked Brie the other day, because one of the things that we put as one of our top priorities is to always talk about the sufficiency of Scripture. The Bible is the best resource on the planet, in the universe. It is where we go to first. And I loved, Brie, when we were talking about that, and you said, I'm so passionate about it because I know it works. God has shown me that what Brian's talking about works. But it's until you do that, till you surrender, until you really get into that frame of mind, it's hard to see it because you're so in the struggle, it would.
And you're operating out of fear instead of operating out of surrender, out of rest, out of
expectation,
trust
that he's going to work.
Yeah.
And when you share those moments with your kids, I think it is so transformative, because I've had some conversation with my kids since I came back from this last retreat and said, I wasn't connecting with you. I wasn't there with you. You're modeling for them this transparency and this rest that they can experience, because they're getting hammered. They're getting all those same messages that we're getting times 10.
True.
Yeah.
So you're able to model for them, hey, this same thing works for you. This same thing is a reality for you as well, not just for me. And face it, they know. They can see when mom's stressed. They can see when I'm not focused. Yesterday, my wife texted me. She's like, the kids are, our daughter wasn't feeling good. It was her night to do dishes. And I was like, if she asks, we're trying to train her to ask, I'll do her dishes for her because she had a migraine. She wasn't doing well, so on. So I'm like, I'm happy to, but she needs to ask. So we want them to have that responsibility. She's like, well, the kids are, concerned because they know you were stressed with the dog. We got a dog.
That sounds like, another podcast.
We got a dog. Long story short, dog is more than our family can handle.
Oh, no.
Dog was abused. And so the dog's trigger level, such a sweet dog, but we given him to somebody who's much more able to give him the time that he needs to undo what was done to him. So it's a good thing all the way around. But my mother-in-law came into town. There was a new person in the house. So the dog was on edge and barked all night in our room because the kids were afraid of him. And then barked half the day, tried to take a nap, barked continually while I'm trying to take a nap. So I'm just we have to get through to Monday because Monday morning we're dropping the dog off. So I got to get through to Monday. Just got to get to Monday. And they saw that stress. The kids saw that stress. They knew where it was. They knew what was going on. They sensed what's going on and that I was in that dad fix-it mode. We're going to get through. I'm going to handle this. Mother-in-law is here. Kids are scared. We're just going to get through. And that's okay for that season. But they sense those things. So as we model to them, hey, there are times you focus on, there's something happening, we got to get through, but we're also going to keep balance. And so dad is going to do the dishes for you. Dad isn't going to let the stress control his complete life. They see that stuff so profoundly, and we're helping counteract those messages that they're getting from everywhere else.
Yeah, just doing real life wide open. You know, let your kids see it and understand it.
Yeah, and seeing how spending time with God is so important, and hopefully modeling that, so then that becomes a habit that they know where to run, they know where to go to when they need that rest for the rest of their lives. So
absolutely.
Okay, Brian. Now that 4-letter word has a whole different framework for us. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I want to leave you with this one scripture that kept coming to mind as you were talking in Philippians 4:6-7. It's an oldie but a goodie. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let the petitions and praises shape your words into prayer, and let God know your concerns. And before you know it, here's the good part. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness will come and settle you down. It's when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life that you experience peace. I love that. I think that's a good word to end on.
That's a good word. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate your wisdom and just your willingness to be honest and open with the mess of life and the goodness that you have learned through spending more time alone with Jesus, the one who gives us true rest. So thank you for being with us today here on A Home That Heals. We would love for you to subscribe and follow along, share your stories with us. Find us on Instagram or Facebook and send them our way, because we can encourage each other and we can help one another along this journey of making our homes that heal.
A Home That Heals is produced in partnership with 89.5 KTSY. To find out more about them, go to ktsy.org.